Hi, I'm Leon, the founder of Audio Advice. This video is all about how to upgrade your Pro-Ject Debut Series turntable. With all of the different options, this is a pretty long video, but I hope if you're a Pro-Ject Debut owner, you'll be able to get a lot out of it. I could not find a comprehensive list anywhere of which upgrades worked on each of the different models over time, so I really hope this is helpful for those of you wanting to get more from your debut turntable. Yes, if you've been getting into vinyl and wondering if things could sound even better, you may not need to sell your debut turntable to pull more sound from your records. Many of the following upgrades will make a substantial difference in your audio experience. I'll go over all the possible upgrades, give you an idea of how much each one might improve your sound, and help you understand the difficulty level of installing the upgrade. I recommend you go check out the written article on our site, as I even put together a chart that shows you what upgrades apply to your specific debut turntable because there have been so many different models over time. I'm going to present these in what I feel is the order of importance for most systems, although there are some exceptions I will point out, and I'll have some general turntable upgrade and maintenance tips at the end. To save some time, we'll flash on screen the upgrade part, its skill level, and which models it applies to, rather than have me repeat each one. I think for most debut turntables, the grounded E will show you the biggest improvement. The grounded E is a special turntable base made by Pro-Ject, designed to work with a variety of their turntables, from the basic elemental line all the way up to the RPM 3. The only case where I would not recommend it first is for headphone-only systems, or if your speakers are very small or in another room from your turntable. When you're playing a record, the stylus on your turntable is traveling through the grooves of the record, picking up very tiny changes in movement. Anything you can do to help isolate your turntable from external vibrations will allow your stylus to do a better job. If you have speakers capable of reproducing deep bass, isolation becomes even more important. The grounded E is a platform made from a very heavyweight MDF covered with a high gloss black paint. The underside has conical spikes that have a damping ring. The feet are also height adjustable, allowing you to get your turntable perfectly level. The whole thing weighs about 9 pounds. The combination of the damping feet and the heavy base give your turntable a lot more isolation from external vibrations than a normal piece of furniture. Installation is very simple. You just use a level to get the grounded E perfectly level by adjusting the feet, then place your debut turntable right on top of it. You should hear a big jump in dynamics using the grounded E. Live music has a sense of rhythm that excites us. In the audio world, we call this timing or rhythm and pacing. It's that feeling of live sound. You'll notice an improvement in timing with the grounded E, as you will hear the subtle emotional details the performers put into the music a lot better. Instruments and voices will sound more expressive, and you'll likely be tapping your toes during your favorite songs. The debut line of turntables, up until recently, all came with an Ortofon Phono cartridge. Most of them came with the 2M Red, while a few have the Ortofon OM5E or OM10. The two most recent models come with the Sumiko Rainier. The great thing about all of these cartridges is that you can upgrade them simply by replacing the stylus with the next model up. Let's look at your options. This is a great cartridge for the money from one of the best manufacturers in the vinyl world. The Ortofon 2M Red that came to your table comes with an elliptical stylus. Stylus tips come in a variety of formats, but the idea is, as you go up to a better one, it makes more contact with the grooves in your record. You can read more in our Turntable Buyer's Guide. The Ortofon 2M Blue has a nude elliptical stylus. This means it's mounted directly to the cantilever, which reduces tip mass. This allows the stylus to pick up more subtle movements in the record grooves. The Ortofon Red and Blue have the exact same body and magnet structure, so the only difference is the stylus. This is pretty cool that you can step up to the sound of the Blue by simply replacing the red stylus. Watch our full overview of the Ortofon 2M Phono cartridge to learn more about each model. The OM series of cartridges are also a great value, and like the 2M Red, have the ability to upgrade your sound by simply changing the stylus. For these, I recommend you move to the Ortofon Stylus OM20. Like the 2M Blue, the OM20 stylus is a nude elliptical type. The new Debut Evo and Pro come with the Sumiko Rainier cartridge, which by itself is a fantastic model. When your Rainier stylus is worn, you can easily upgrade to the better Sumiko Olympia or even the Moonstone simply by replacing the stylus. Installation requires just a little bit of care. You need to pull off the old stylus, which takes a bit of wiggling to work it loose on the Ortofons. then you can very carefully push the new Stylus back in place. It's actually easier to put the new one on than to pull the old one off, but just make sure you're holding the new one by the outer edges and get it on all the way. With all of these, you'll hear a greater sense of dynamics and improvements in small details. You'll almost feel like a veil has been lifted from your music. If you have had your turntable for a while and feel like you've played around 1,000 hours of music, it's time for a new Stylus anyway, so why not step up to a better one? If you don't want to go to the expense of the grounded E, these little dampened isolation feet will get you part of the way there. These are made from the same TPE material found in the isolation feet on the Evo and Pro debut models. This high-tech material acts as a filter for frequencies below 500 Hz to help reduce the chance of acoustic feedback getting into your turntable. You simply put these directly under the stock feet on your turntable. It's best to get them perfectly centered on your old feet, which is the only reason I listed these as pretty easy and not super simple. These two have the same caveat as the grounded E. If you're listening to only the headphones, have your turntable in another room from your speakers, or your speakers don't produce much bass, you'll likely not hear an improvement. However, most listeners will hear the same type of improvements as a grounded E, not just as substantial. If you have a grounded E, Debut Evo or Debut Pro, I put this upgrade further down the list, but still beneficial. As a side note, these work very well under speakers that might be in close proximity to your turntable and are highly recommended in that application if your turntable is on the same shelf as your speakers. After you have your turntable well isolated, another upgrade that will improve timing and dynamics is a heavier platter. The acrylic, as the name implies, is an acrylic replacement platter that is heavier and larger in diameter than the stock platter on your debut turntable. The extra weight gives the platter more of a flywheel effect, plus it's got an edge around it that's even heavier. This causes the platter to spin at a more consistent rate of speed. The surface of the platter is similar to vinyl, and I recommend using it without any type of turntable mat. The acrylic's composition is a very inert material that is almost impervious to picking up any vibrations. There's also a small indentation in the center where the record label is to allow your LPs to sit even flatter on its surface. You'll also find that acrylic is miles easier to clean than a felt mat, which will keep debris from transferring to your records. It pairs up really well with the Pro-Ject Clamp It 2. Installation is a snap. All you have to do is remove the stock platter and mat, then put their acrylic in place. With the acrylic, you'll hear an improvement in timing and you should feel like the bass tones reach deeper with more impact. Plus, it just looks really cool. The Debut Pro already comes with a fantastic platter, so I'd recommend doing the next upgrade for the Pro before the acrylic. The sub-platter is the part of your turntable the main platter rests on top of. It also includes the bearing that sits in the bearing well of your turntable. When you replace the composite material with a precision-made alu subplatter, you'll get a couple of improvements. The aluminum subplatter is made with a diamond cutting process, which means it's made to much tighter tolerances than the standard subplatter. It also is heavier, which adds mass and improves damping. These are such hot sellers right now, I don't even have one to show you. Adding the aluminum subplatter is a snap as you simply take off the outer platter and replace the subplatter with the new one. The technical result will be less resonance with better speed accuracy, which will translate to your ears hearing those tiny emotional dynamic changes that really draw you into the music. It's similar to some of the changes you'll hear with the grounded E, but for a different reason. For those of you lucky enough to have a Debut Pro, this is the next upgrade you should do after the grounded E. For headphone-focused listening, this will be a bigger improvement than any of the other isolation upgrades I've talked about earlier. You probably observed that your debut turntable gets its power from a typical little wall wart type power supply. In the world of high performance turntables, power supplies are a big deal, with some turntables selling external power supplies that can cost thousands of dollars. The theory is the better power you can send to the turntable motor, the more consistent the motor's speed will be. Consistent motor speed results in a better sense of timing, improved dynamics, and more separation of the instruments so you can hear each one clearly. There are 3 different power supply upgrades that will totally depend on which version of the debut turntable you have. The Speedbox S2 replaces your wall wart with a more sophisticated external power supply. Pro-Ject's engineering team has put a lot of effort into designing a low noise circuit with a crystal generator to supply an output perfectly suited to their turntable motors. It even adds the ability to switch from 33 to 45 on the front of the unit. Installation is very straightforward. You simply remove the wall wart power supply from your turntable, Connect the Speedblock S2's 16-volt power feed to the connector on the back of your debut you had the wall wart plugged into. Then you connect the power supply for the Speedbox up to the 18-volt power in. When Pro-Ject moved to a DC motor for their debut models, and you'll know this by looking on it, it's going to say Pro-Ject Debut DC, they added much of the tech inside the Speedbox to these turntables. However, all of them still just come with a small wall wart power supply. Pro-Ject has recently introduced a beefier external power supply called the High Power It. This simply replaces the existing power supply with a high current type. The PowerBox S2 is a step up from the High Power It with a much more sophisticated external power supply. Pro-Ject's engineering team again put a lot of effort into designing a low noise circuit with an output perfectly suited to the motor for these type of tables. It even has a couple of additional outputs to improve other Pro-Ject box components. Installation is again very straightforward. Remove the wall wart power supply from your table. Connect the PowerBox S2's 15-volt power feed to the connector on the back of your debut carbon you had the wall wart plugged into. Then you connect the power supply for the PowerBox S2 up to the 20-volt power in. Comparing this to the High Power It, I kind of feel like you need a really good system to hear the difference in performance between these two. The more resolving power your speakers or headphones have, the bigger the differences will be between the PowerBox S2 and the High Power It. Most of you by now are probably wondering how you know if you have an AC or DC motor debut. The back of your turntable where the power connects should have a small symbol that will tell you. The symbols have varied a bit over the models, but you will see the AC has a continuous sine wave and the DC has a dashed line, something like the image you're seeing right now. Headphone-only listeners should move this upgrade closer to the top of the list. Most debut turntables come with some pretty decent phono cables. I was able to confirm all of the models had detachable cables except for the very early ones where I'm not sure. The Connected E and Connected RCA-CC are upgraded phono cables specifically designed for the low-level signal coming out of a phono cartridge. Phono signals are so low in level, any noise the cable picks up can degrade your sound because it's amplified so much after that. Pro-Ject supplies the RCA-CC cables with their multi-$1,000 model turntables, as they are made to reject external noise emitted by audio components and all the high-frequency radio signals in the air these days from wireless access points and cell phones. They designed the RCA-CC cables to have very low capacitance and almost perfect shielding. They are all handmade in their European factory using very high-end parts for the leads, plugs, and dielectric. The Pro-Ject team even did listening tests on the materials. They went so far as to listen to different lengths and decided a 1.23 meter cable length was ideal for transmitting a phono signal. The Connected E is a more cost-effective version of the RCA-CC with less expensive parts. Installation of both is very simple. First, turn off the power to your amplifier phono preamp. Remove the old cables. For the RCA-CC, we suggest you just pull off the ground wire from the original cable and use it as the ground, as the RCA-CC does not include the ground wire. The Connected E does have the ground. Install the new cable, paying attention to the left and right, and connect the ground wire at both ends. I find it easier to connect the ground wire first, giving your fingers a little bit more room. The improvement in sound you'll hear with this is a quieter background and a more open sound. If you have your speakers set up to reveal a nice three-dimensional soundstage, you'll also feel your soundstage get even better, allowing you to sense the space around instruments better. I suggest the RCA-CC version for most systems, although the Connected E is better than what you find on the earlier models. Bear in mind the debut Ebro and Pro already include the Connected E. There's been some debate over the years in the analog world about the benefits of record clamps. You'll find all kinds out in the market, from super lightweight push-on plastic models to very heavy weights. Putting the wrong weight on a turntable can actually degrade the sound if it adds too much additional pressure on the platter bearing. Some weights can also cause the outer edges of your record to lift up off the surface of the platter, and we certainly don't want that. Pro-Ject has come up with an elegant, lightweight clamp that you can actually fine-tune to each record. It's really a well-machined piece of gear that not only works great, but is a joy to use and admire in your turntable. Getting a slightly warped record to lay flat on the platter will improve the sense of speed accuracy, and you'll hear more small details. How you use to clamp it will depend on the record itself. If your record is relatively flat, you want to push the clamp it down gently, but not so far as to cause the edge of the record to rise off the platter. You'll then twist it to tighten it around the platter spindle. If the record is warped, you'll push down more or less depending on the warp, but the idea is to get the record to lay as flat as you can. This does require a little eyeballing to get it right. I found the improvement offered by the clampet to vary a lot from disc to disc. It seems like the more warped your disc is, the bigger change you'll experience. But in any case, it also just looks super cool sitting on your turntable. There's a new Pro clamp designed for the Pro turntable. However, it's just a weight, and we much prefer the way you can fine-tune the clampet to the amount of warp your record might have, and recommend the clampet over the Pro weight. Either of these nice replacement mats can be the icing on the cake for your upgrades. Or if you live in an environment where you have a lot of static electricity, they can be a must. Both of them can help reduce resonances just a tiny bit, although hearing the effect on most systems is difficult. The reason to get one of these is all about static electricity and keeping your mat clean. It seems like the stock felt mats attract hair and dust like crazy. You can put a clean record on a mat, and you would pick it up to flip it over, now it's all dirty. Both the leather mat and combination cork and rubber mat are very easy to clean and have anti-static properties. I find the leather version the easiest to keep clean of the two. If you did the acrylic, do not use either of these mats. It will reduce the effectiveness of the upgraded platter, and the acrylic is by far the easiest one to clean and has no issues with static. These next upgrades are not really part of your debut turntable, but should be considered by anyone who loves the sound of vinyl. As you may know, the sound coming out of your cartridge is at a very low level and needs to have an equalization circuit called RIA applied to it before it makes its way to your amplifier. The quality of the Phono preamp can make a huge difference in the sound of your system. One model that is a very good value is the Pro-Ject Phono Box S2. It has a whole bank of switches on the bottom allowing you to fine-tune it for a moving magnet, high output moving coil, or a low output moving coil. Very high quality components are used throughout, resulting in a clean, effortless sound with many more subtle details being revealed to your ears. You'll also notice a big improvement in bass over most built-in phono stages. A very clean record sounds far better than one that has not been properly cleaned. You'll experience a huge reduction in surface noise, allowing you to listen more closely to the individual instruments. As you get the grime out of the way of your stylus, it will track deeper in the grooves, picking up more nuances of your music. A very clean record compared to a dirty one is analogous to the difference between a dirty window versus a clean window. The only real way to get your vinyl seriously clean is with a wet cleaning system. Pro-Ject actually makes a great record cleaning machine called the VCE. It's a wet cleaning system with a vacuum to remove all of the debris the wet cleaning lifts out of the grooves, leaving you with a pristine surface. If you have some friends who are into vinyl, it's not a bad idea to share the cost and share the machine, as you only need to do a wet cleaning once if you handle your records with care. We did a whole video on wet record cleaning. Check it out in the link below. Pro-Ject also now has two pretty cool record sweepers to keep your vinyl clean as it plays, called the Sweep It E and Sweep It S2. These are great to use after you've given your records a good wet clean to remove any residue they might pick up inside the record sleeve. If your debut turntable is more than 2 years old, it is likely you could use a new belt and some oil in the bearing. These are inexpensive parts we normally have in stock. The oil is called Lube It, and the belt is easy to change out. Now here's some free tips. Acoustic feedback getting in your turntable can have a very negative impact on the sound. The larger your speakers are and the closer they are to your turntable, the more likely this can happen. You will hear feedback as a howling sound, and once you hear it, you'll know what I mean. You can prevent feedback by not having your turntable or speakers on the same shelf and placing your turntable on a solid surface, or using something like the grounded E or the dampened feet. Another consideration is how you route your cables coming out of your turntable. They're carrying a very low level signal, and you want to keep them as far away as possible from AC power cords. If you have to cross an AC cord, do it at a 90-degree angle. Never tie the phono cables and a power cable together for neatness. Keep them far apart. You should also never try to extend the length of your phono cables. They are short for a reason. I hope these tips and suggestions on how to upgrade your debut turntable make your world of vinyl listening even more fun. If you have any questions, give us a call, chat with us, or stop into one of our award-winning showrooms. If you have any questions at all, please feel to reach out to us at audioadvice.com. We're excited to help you improve your musical experience while having fun along the way. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to our channel. We'd really love it if you subscribe to our channel so you'll know about all the cool videos we do. And thanks for watching.